On. Hello, everyone. It's Pittsburgh Pat, and I'm here with Ryan Doyle of the Vertigree Table. How are you, Ryan?
I'm pretty good this morning. So far, so good.
Yeah, this is great. So we're all nice and warm in our houses because it's like sub-zero temperatures outside, or it was. I think we just got above zero. So good time to talk about D&D. So everybody who's watching, I hope you're staying warm and safe and getting your D&D sessions in. We haven't had a session for a month because of the holidays and inclement weather. Last week we were going to play, but the roads were terrible. So we didn't play in because we play in person. But yeah, so we should probably have a backup plan, or at some point maybe we have a plan for playing remotely. Um,
I was ready to run last night online if
mhm.
like we got a bunch of snow or something.
Mhm.
I was prepared for that.
I
But yeah,
think,
well,
what do you think? Do you think like the majority of this is probably something that people could write in the comments. Do you play online or do you play in person? Like I wonder what it is now, but I'm guessing that the resurgence in popularity of D&D had a lot to do with when people were avoiding social contact a few years ago. And so there was this renaissance. And I wonder how many people, what percentage of players are playing online? I wonder if that's like a majority now.
I'd be curious to see that too. Yeah, my
Yeah.
instinct is to just like hedge and put it at like 50-50.
Yeah,
But
that's
I'm sure it's tipped one way or the other.
mhm.
So I run my other we haven't gotten together in a long time either, basically the
Mhm.
same stretch of time because of life and whatever. But I run two games, one is online, one is in person. They both have their benefits and drawbacks. Um my preference is there's nothing like sitting around the table with your friends. There's things you can do with software and visuals and music. And our in-person game is actually a public in-person game. We're at a game shop. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, we're not in our
Um,
somebody's basement or at somebody's kitchen table. We're actually
exactly.
at a place that's designated to use it for that, but also designated to be used for other things as well. And there's a cafe in there now. So there's people coming in off the street that don't play, and there's an organized event when we play on Tuesdays, which is a social game, which actually wasn't very loud last night. Um, but
No.
did you notice? So there was a prior to there. So basically, it's blood on the clock tower, and they arranged like 13 chairs in a circle, and there's two circles, and there were some guys that were going to play a board game right in the middle of the two circles. Did you end up seeing what happened to those guys?
I clocked them.
Yeah, you did.
First instinct was like, oh, maybe Blood of the Clock Tower is not happening, which seems like I'm not casting stones. It seems like a very fun game. If I
Yeah.
wasn't running D&D every Tuesday, like maybe I jump over there. You did jump in there once or twice.
Hmm.
It seems like a very cool RP heavy, like murder mystery kind of game. There's a lot of like Mafia, Werewolf. There seems to be a lot of games in that like genre, but this seems to be like a very well developed one.
Right.
And the people who are running it have are clearly like have the chops.
They're organized. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But there were a couple guys setting up because it's also board game night. There were a couple guys setting up to play like at the table between the two circles. And
Yeah.
I was like I considered going if I knew them, I would have gone up and said something. But I
Right.
did not recognize them. And my first impulse was, okay, Blood and Clock Tower is not happening tonight, which is the noisiest interaction there. Or two, those guys are going to move. And I think they ended up moving.
Yeah, I would imagine so, but I lost track of them because we were so into our game, and the game it was great to play in per again after a little over a month of not playing, and so we had to do a big recap because one of the players had missed a session before that as well, I think, and
Yes,
so
yeah,
yeah,
a couple
couple
sessions.
sessions, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
everybody was a little rusty. And I will say, as like a fairly experienced dungeon master, I've been doing this, multiple times a week for years and years and years. I had that little like flutter of like, oh boy, I'm rusty and like I hope I don't screw this up. Like
huh?
I had a little stage fright nerves kick in on the way over to Phil's last night. I'm just like, ooh, I haven't felt this in a little bit. Like,
That's pretty cool because I don't feel that anymore, and Yeah, I haven't felt that in a long time, but yeah, none of that came through. I mean, you were, spot on, but like, yeah, that's interesting. So that's good to know for people that are watching that are, my channel is basically for new DMs or people that are DMs are trying to look for things to do, like things to incorporate into their games. But that's important to realize that, like, you know, having those moments of anticipation, or that's cool. That's kind of savor that, that feeling of, I don't want to even go as far as call it insecurity, but like just those moments of like excitement, I guess, because yeah, don't want it to become a routine. But yeah, so for those who need a refresher, because we haven't talked about this for a while, basically it's a party of you're the dungeon masters, 4 players right now. We may be getting a fifth. We lost a player about a month ago who moved away. And so there's a paladin, a tiefling paladin. There's a bunch of elves.
Hmm,
We got a starry elf, who's female, who's a character that's in Dolmen Woods, Winter's Tale, who's a druid.
hmm,
He's
hmm.
being played by a guy, Mike, and yeah, Patrick's playing the paladin. Me, Pat, I go by Pat at the tables to differentiate us. And I'm playing a rogue. I switched over to a arcane trickster. We're all using the 2024 rules except for the paladin. And then Craig, who's getting up to speed, he's who missed a few sessions before this. He's a monk, so he's kind of the newer player. So we get to see some monk stuff. So that's pretty cool. So we're learning, we're learning. And last night everybody had an animal
Yeah, everyone's got to
familiar
find familiar.
or something, except for the
There's zero
paladin.
wizards, but two familiar.
Yeah, which was great because we came up on this island and there's a old, like, I don't want to say fortress, but like a I forget, how did you call it?
It's a fort converted to like a small like monastery. I think like garrison and hermitage is
Got it.
the name in the book.
Got it. And we're doing
But
Ghost
yeah,
of Saltmarsh for those of
classic
you.
D&D design. This
Yeah.
used to be something else. Now it's, well, this was built hundreds of years ago for one purpose. Now it's been repurposed, and then something just happened. There's like always like a layer cake of like 3 levels of history in a
Hmm.
good dungeon.
So that's
Um,
a D&D trope. That's something that they do a lot.
that's something that they do a lot, and I think I'm gonna say overdue. Like I've simplified some of the timeline stuff, um, in part because of character choices. Both in character creation and in backstory. I mean, in backstory and in like during play.
Yeah,
Things have happened, so I've been adjusting this adventure to keep it more and more relevant. Because I'm running Ghost of Saltmarsh. I'm running out of a book, um, but I am homebrewing aspects of it.
sure. Sure.
So yeah, a
Yeah,
lot
well,
of
we've
things that happened yesterday are going to be more interesting than something that happened a decade ago or 100 years ago. And
yeah,
if it
we've
doesn't
talked
matter, the immediacy, I don't know, feels more punchy.
Yeah, we talked about this before where the books or the modules that you download offline or wherever you get this Wizards of the Coast kind of stuff, you can add to that, right? And you can adjust it and modify it, and it's made to be done. But yeah, I agree. Like sometimes having those layers upon layers can be confusing. You give details, but they can be misperceived as, kind of like red herrings, false clues, that sort of thing, when they're meant to be like flavorful.
Especially when there were, as written, there's a cast of characters in this that you'll never meet. There's a bunch of historical figures,
Right.
and like maybe you get two before they all start to blend together. So to be like, well, this wizard did this and this wizard did that, it's like, I'm not going to keep track of which is which anymore. Like,
Yeah,
so I am a big fan of like compressing important NPCs. The there's only so much bandwidth that players are going to even pretend to care about these
exactly.
characters that they've
Exactly.
actually never long gone or recently gone. So yeah, I feel like you still had there was a lot of note taking yesterday anyway,
Yeah, I
and that's
do. I
with
think I have like
me.
7 pages of notes.
And that's, yeah, that's
Like
with me
six.
editing out stuff and making stuff more relevant. And it still felt like I was just like lore dumping at a bunch of different points to you.
Oh yeah. So it was pretty cool though using the familiars to do exploration. So
Hmm.
the monk had something. Well, the monk didn't have find familiar. He had another ability that
He
he
has a
was a
bag of tricks. He has a bag of
bag of
tricks.
tricks.
So he's got like an animal companion. It does his will. But then communication gets tricky. But he had speak with animals, which simplified things.
Nice. And it's random, right? When he pulls out his bag of tricks, he doesn't know which animal he's going to get, right? He just like
Which
flips a
is why,
card.
because
So
like
he,
it's the ones that he pulled the brown bear, which is
yeah,
like the 8 on the D8. It's like the strongest. If we were going into like a combat situation, that's what you want.
yeah,
And eventually we did go into a combat
34
situation
hit
with it.
points.
But like the one time he's hoping to get the like I don't even there's like random stuff in there like a muskrat or I don't know what, just like a lower
Something that can
CR.
scurry up a fortress
Exactly.
wall. Yeah.
Yeah, he got the one or he got a large creature with a ton of hit points, but no stealth, no like ability to like slide through like a little chink in the door frame or
Yeah.
something.
So
Yeah.
then Mike's, well, that's the thing. So he uses the bear to like kind of scout the perimeter of the wall, the as exterior wall, because we're outside of the this fortress. And and then the druid, Mike's druid, summons an owl, and he's got these great little figurines. So he's
Mm.
and the owl is like flying around the battlements. And then so I was like, well, what? I was actually just going to climb a wall as the rogue, but then I was like, no, if we're all doing this, then I'll uh, just have like a mouse or a rat. So we used rat stats, but I called it a mouse, and just have them slide underneath the front door and walk in, you know. So these are creative ways to use like relatively low level spells to do some really fun exploration. We've talked about how exploration is often the shortest leg in the triad of
Yeah, man.
exploration, combat, and
The stool's pretty
neutral.
wonky.
Yeah, and encounters. But we had a really nice amount of exploration last night, and it was, it was fun. Hex mat that you were drawing with a, wet erase marker on, and so, we're doing it old school, instead of electronically, and that's fun. That's fun. It's exciting to see what's behind the next door, and
Hmm.
the party split into two ways. One climbed the exterior wall. The rest of us, or the other two of us, went in through the front door, and then we end up meeting up. And it's pretty fun to see where the maps meet. So, like, draw like one level and then second level, and then where they like overlay. That was pretty fun. So it worked out really well. I thought you handled that really, really nicely. Because when the party splits, that can be intimidating for a lot of DMs.
Yes, that is one of those rules where you have to learn, you honor it until you're ready to break it, right? Like I like when the party's split. Um, because there's more there's more room in the spotlight, right? Now there's two spotlights, right? So now it's like two people over here, two people over there, opposed to like four people trying to like, elbow their way into the light.
Mm,
Um, but it does make things more challenging on the player side too. It's more dangerous for sure. And it's a little more, I'm splitting my focus as the DM. So it is a more like experienced dungeon master move.
hmm
But I think once you get to that tier, once you're ready for it, like it's great, and like you've been conditioned to fear it and warn against it, and some very interesting things can happen as long as everybody's on the same page. Like you guys honored the wall between what your characters knew and what the players knew.
Yeah, that's
Um,
important. It's important to know the difference
yeah.
between meta and in-game like knowledge. And but that's the way most stories are written. So if you see like a half-hour TV show, like you watch a episode of Family Guy or something, you're gonna see the A story and the B story. So having that happen, that's a natural way to tell a story. And it's nice to be able to kind of, as a player, I have to say it can be fun because you get your moment of attention where your character is doing what it's doing or you're familiar or whatever. And then you get to sit back and watch too. So you get to be like a spectator, and that can be a fun element too. If you are willing to be able to let up on the reins and watch your friends have fun and make their jokes and have their characters make their mistakes and have their adventures. It is like watching an episode of a
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's kind of counterintuitive and maybe depends on the kind of person, the kind of player, but it feels like you can actually pay better attention to the other plots, right? To the B squad or whatever, because that's all that's expected of you. You can actually like
yes,
passively observe what they're doing and devote your full focus to that instead of running some background process of like, okay, what am I going to do? When am I like, has it been too long since I said something? Should I step up right now? What spell could I contribute to this? What ability can I use here? It's like all of that's off the table. I'm on pause right now.
that's right.
I'm on commercial break. I can
No,
just
that's
watch what they're doing.
yeah, that's right. And I mean that's the thing, and especially during combat because there's kind of this uh you don't a player an intermediate player doesn't want to uh kind of like break the momentum by sitting there
Mm.
and trying to figure out what spell they're going to use or what action they're going to use next. So when it's their turn in combat, they're ready. Uh, and that's courtesy. That's courtesy. But um, but you are of half a mind. And it happened for me. I mean, we had been away for a month, and I didn't do my due diligence. I should have read my character sheet. We were rolling perception checks like crazy, and I forgot that at level 8, rogues have a property that's called an ability called reliable talent, which allows them to use any proficiency skill roll that's under a 9 or under and count it as a 10, and then add their bonus. So every roll that I rolled under 15 should have been a 15 or higher because I have a +5 and proficiency in perception. And any rolls that were under 9 could have been tens. But, and that's on me. I should have done that. But, we were talking about that ability, and Patrick and I looked across the table at one point, and I'm like, that's kind of broken. Like that's something that, and then you said, people underestimate rogues because they're looking at DPS, but damage per turn or per round. And there's just those abilities are amazing, that to be able to do checks and investigation and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I am always shocked to see how low rogues get ranked on those like player
Yeah, those tier
character
lists.
class yeah, tier lists. And I think it's you're only observing admittedly the most the focused upon part of the game. Sure, but not the entirety of the game. It feels like maybe it's supposed to be a third. I think in most tables, maybe it's closer to half. But even so, you're leaving off half the game, where the rogue can shine pretty well at social,
Yeah,
depending on how you're built and depending on who you're talking to, because the rogue's got thieves' cant. There's like a certain literally class, socioeconomic sphere of people that the rogue's gonna have way more influence than the the bard with a 20 charisma who's a noble is gonna narratively, at least in my mind, is gonna have a different conversation with the fence in the shady
absolutely.
black market stall than the rogue. The rogue's already got it in. And then skills, forget about it. Just exploration based. That's where the rogue shines in a way
Mhm.
that like maybe the ranger outdoor, if you're playing a certain style, can like keep up, but like you're in a dungeon without a rogue, you're gonna miss that rogue straight up.
Mhm.
Before you give that rogue arcane trickster and a familiar mouse that can sneak through a little chink in the door and run some recon for you. Yeah, rogues are dope. I keep advocating for that. I'll never
It's fun.
stop.
Yeah, it's fun. There's something I keep running into though. So we're doing these character builds in order to learn about the new 2024 rules. And actually, we have the monster manual coming up in a few weeks, so
I'm
that should be
pumped.
fun.
Yeah.
And so we'll get that, and we'll have a lot of fun with some new monster stats. The um, the thing that I wish that I see. One of the reasons that I switched from being kind of that charming swashbuckling rogue character to switching it to arcane trickster is that I wanted some spells, and I find myself not using those in combat, especially against animals or monstrosities or things like that. We were fighting some assassin vines,
Mm,
which was really cool. So basically, like, these giant vines that they're embedded in the ground, but they have a good reach. And so the paladin was trying to pick the berries and off of the vines and got snared a couple times, grappled. And we'll talk about grappling a little bit. But yeah, what I find is, I was at range, so it statistically behooves me to just short bow fire arrows because I can stay put, give myself advantage, and then give myself sneak attack, right? So
mhm.
anytime I have advantage, I get to roll a sneak attack dice. So, it just makes more sense. And in fact, at one point, I did roll a couple natural 20s. One point I had like 41 damage in one round, just a lot for a rogue at level 8. And that wasn't even a great roll on the damage dice. But you're rolling like I'm rolling 4d6 for the sneak attack damage, and then a d6 and plus 5 for the standard damage from the weapon. But what I really wanted to do was I thought, okay, this is vegetation, so maybe I should try to burn it, right? So I really wanted to just like firebolt or something like that. But the way the character is written, there's really no advantage to do that, right? And it doesn't make sense to do that. And then it turned out the assassin vines are alive, so they're greenwood, so like they actually do have resistance to fire. But
Mm,
the character doesn't know that, right? And that's the
right.
fun thing about this new monster manual is, maybe some of the properties that we're used to, or maybe some of these new monsters, we're not going to know um, as much as we do about the ones that have been around for 10 years or longer in the 2014 Monster Manual, right? Or whenever that came out. So, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Like, I'm thinking there's going to be more surprises. You're really good at mixing it up with the monsters. In fact, we had a monster, what'd you call it? It was like half deer, half bird last time.
Oh, Paraton. Yeah, that's
Paraton.
one of my favorite obscure monsters.
Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
hear about that one a lot. And you know, that's cool. And then finally, um the uh the paladin, or I'm sorry, the druid figured out that blight was what we were
Mm.
looking for. Blight is basically like spraying Roundup on the vines, right? Just
Yeah, auto fail to save, and that's that.
yes, they're kryptonite. But the grappling rules are a little different in this version, right? So let's talk about that a little bit. So grappling rules in 2024 are a DC, right?
It's a flat DC. It's not a contested roll. So there's a escape DC, which is like passive athletics or passive strength for a
And
lot of
that's
the
determined
for,
by the
for a lot of the monsters. Yeah.
dungeon master determines that.
Yeah, or yeah, the monster stat block, and obviously, yeah, the dungeon master can change that, but it's no
Okay.
longer. It used to be contested strength checks. And like
Right.
the if you're escaping the grapple, you can do acrobatics or athletics. You can try to like slink out or brute force your way out, and it's strength to hold on. They're cleaning things up and simplifying things, it seems like, which I don't. I like the feel of a contested role, like die versus die, like
Definitely.
that feels fun to me, but they're streamlining the game in combat, which is necessary. Combat can drag out sometimes, even with a bunch of experience and tips and tricks and little hacks and everyone being prepared. Like,
Yeah.
well, combat can take a long time, especially at higher levels. So there's a lot of things that used to be you get stung by a scorpion. It's a roll to hit. If it hits, now you're making a save to see if you get poisoned or not. Now a lot of effects like that, you get hit, it's happening. You're poisoned. Like it's
Right.
all one. You're not rolling that save anymore. Or
Yeah.
vice versa. It's just a save. You're not getting it's not about to hit anymore. So just like fewer consultations of the dice in a lot of
Yeah, I've noticed the saving
situations.
rolls have gotten like fewer and fewer. I don't call for them as much, and I also don't roll them as much. And to me, that seems to be, I don't know, starting to miss that. So I might incorporate that into some of my sessions as when I'm
Hmm.
DM because I think it's it's fun to players like to roll dice, right? So I think that's a fun opportunity for them, and it does speak to the character. I mean, why else have that saving throw block there if you're not going to use it? The contested roll thing just always made sense to me logically, because if nine times out of ten you're going to have a situation where, well, maybe not nine times out of ten, but it's more likely that like somebody who just does have a high strength modifier is going to be able to win that contest, that grappling contest. Um, but like you said, they're trying to, I think some of the motivation behind the new book is that they're looking for new players, right? They've they've already got their
Hmm.
audience. So they're trying to simplify for newer players, I think. Um, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not what they're doing because they did go back and talk about Greyhawk, so that's like a throwback to the really generational players.
Yeah, I think the greatest strength and the greatest weakness of, we'll say, this era of D&D, now that it's 5.5 and 5, like it tries to be all things for all people. It
Mhm.
tries to be as approachable and beginner friendly and provide the least amount of gatekeeping and the most amount of on-ramps while also trying to appeal to seasoned players. It tries to keep things fairly simple and accessible while being very min-max crunchy. So it very quickly becomes clear what everybody's preference is based on what they don't like, what they think 5e is failing at, and they wish it was one way or another.
Yeah,
There might be another game for them, but 5e is where all those people can come to have that conversation. Um,
yeah, that's a good point.
it's a Swiss Army knife of a game, and that's again a lot of. I think that's neutral at the end of the day. You can
Yeah,
make
they're giving
adjustments
us
to it.
tools, and it's whether or not we want to pick up those tools and use them. That's what's up to
Yeah.
us.
And
But even
we're in a
last night,
phase in this game where we're still like we're getting the monster manual in a couple of weeks. Like we still don't have the whole game. So
right?
to a large extent, at least early in the night, I am running rules as written as much as I can. Because as I was saying with like splitting the party, you play by the rules
Mhm.
until you have a good grasp of those rules before you start changing things. Because I've
Mhm.
definitely changed things without realizing why they were there in the first place, what sort of interactions were happening with other aspects of the game that I didn't notice until those things broke or whatever. So I'm a big advocate of like playing rules as written for a while before you start interpreting rules as intended and or your personal preference. Like there's a world where we're going to go back to contested strength checks for grappling.
Sure.
But I want to know and like feel and witness at the table experientially, how the rules as written functions first.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to dismiss it out of hand. It's like reading a recipe and never baking the cake and saying, "Oh, that's never going to be any good." Why they have like a teaspoon of salt in there instead of a quarter teaspoon? Well, you don't know until you make it. Once you make it, then you can modify it. But
Exactly.
the one thing that we talked about last night that kind of parallels this is that smoking feather. Um, we were talking about like, do you want to? We found a magical object and it had an
Hmm.
anchor on it, and that's a clue, but it wasn't a strong enough clue. I just naturally went and looked it up because I didn't know what it was. But as a player, should I have done that? Should I have just waited? So like old school D&D, you used to find something and then you'd have to go to a wizard or you would have to have the identify spell and then you would know what it was, right? Um, or you could just mess around with it and just try it and see what happened. And we were talking about the difference. So is it more fun to wear like the medallion that turns undead not knowing that it's also like got another property that keeps bringing the undead toward you or something, is that more fun or is it more fun to know what you have in your pocket so that at the right opportunity you can use it? So for instance, the token that we found, the magical object we found, what was it called? I forget.
It's Qual, I think.
Qual's feather
Quaal,
token.
Qual's
Yeah.
feather token, and you found the anchor version of that.
Yeah.
Um,
Which has a
so
very
like,
specific thing that it does, and
mhm.
you slap it against the side of it. And spoiler here, if you don't like it, turn us off for the next 5 seconds. You slap it against the side of a ship, and the ship won't move, right? So it's a good way to like get away. What did we? I forget what the analogy. Oh, we talked about Pirates of the Caribbean. It's the way Jack Sparrow would get away from the royal fleet. So,
Yeah, it's like pulling a parking brake or something. Not that that's how parking brakes work, even, but
yeah,
uh,
like
like putting a boot.
yeah, I forget. Was it the Millennium Falcon was like anchored down in Solo, or there was something like that where there were spaceships tethered to the. Oh, that was it. The TIE fighters in Force Awakens that are still tethered and Poe's trying to fly it, and it can't get out of the bay because it's
Mm-hmm.
got a big chain on it or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like still refueling or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, at
it's
the gas
something.
station.
I don't know. I'm silly.
Yeah, so there are the word artifact has a particular meaning,
Right.
but like if it is a story specific particular, if it's not like a book, if it's not in the DMG, let's say it's not in the Magic Item catalog. There's a lot of times where narratively it's more interesting. Like this guy's wearing this amulet, you know it's something, but you don't know what the deal is, and like through play you learned what that was at the whatever the last spooky island monastery that you guys were exploring. Um, this time around, you found that token, and I didn't know if you would find it or not, but there is a wizard has like a whole freaking magical toolbox of magic items to explore shipwrecks that you may or may not find. So there are six, seven, italic magic items. Most of them are in the DMG. One or two of them are specific to this adventure.
Yeah.
Um, but like there's a world where you use those in 2 or 3 hours in game time. You are 3, 4 days from town. You have a pretty tenuous relationship with the wizard in that town anyway.
Right.
To spend a week of game time going to figure out what these magic items are when you, the players, can infer. Or, I mean, there's a world where you experiment with them and that can be fun and zany,
Sure.
but it's also me like keeping track of your inventory potentially, we haven't played for 5, 6 weeks. Like Ryan would not remember that. Ryan's notes knows what happened,
Right.
but I rather, for convenience sake, on like several levels, this is what this is. This is what it does. You know that. I know you know that. I no longer have to keep that in my RAM. I can
Right.
clear space for other decisions and keeping track of other things. And like your characters can put these to use because you are fairly high level characters in a fairly magical world in a nautical themed adventure that you've been on for months now.
Yeah. Against
Uh,
some rather deadly creatures. We've seen a kraken, we've seen like, powerful undead,
yeah, so we can
but
make like a straight
yeah.
up Arcana check, or you could attune. Like, there's a bunch of different ways to do it.
Mhm.
In again in like lower level fantasy stuff like in Dolmenwood a lot of times you would find a thing you wouldn't quite know what it is until you experimented with it or whatever.
Yeah.
But like it's not as interesting to me to force you to go back to Saltmarsh to learn the magic word that activates this magic item and then you'll be
Yeah.
back here in 8 days to continue our adventure.
Yeah.
Because like the 50 gold or whatever he's going to charge you to identify it is meaningless now.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. I mean, back in the old days, the early days where they talked about going into dungeons, and then the assumption was you would come back out, right?
Yes.
You go to the dungeon like you were a couple high school kids after school exploring the caves, or the old steam tunnels or the whatever, the abandoned warehouse. And then you would go home and eat dinner, and then the next day you would come out again and do it again, and that sort of like mechanic was an early version of D&D. That's now you're kind of like it's maybe video games have influenced it where it's like you go through all, the progressively more difficult challenges in a on a path that's, I'm not saying this is the way we do it, but in video games, it's usually like one, or maybe there's a small branch or there's a couple side branches, but you go on this main thing and then you meet the big baddie, and then there's a back door that you open to get out, and
Yeah,
then
it's
you're out. So,
it's
it's like, well, why didn't we
fairly
go in the
linear.
back door? But
Yeah.
yeah, but that's the kind of way that it feels sometimes. And yeah, I mean, that's for better or worse what we're dealing with a lot of times with these modules. But once you get the treasure, once you defeat the ultimate baddie, the thing is over. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case. And I like that, I like what was the one there was one that you did, I think yeah, it was Dolmenwood, where there was kind of like a living dungeon where there were several things going on at the same time. It was
Hmm.
there was a there were sigils on a wall, or there was like signs on a wall we had to like interpret, and they all talked about it was like a hallway with six doors, and there were symbols or like words, code words on the wall that were talking about
Yes.
different types of death.
That was, I'm 90% sure that's in the Incandescent Grottos.
Yeah,
But yes, that
it
was in the
is.
Dolmenwood
It is
campaign.
incandescent grottos. Yeah. And that's fun because that was going on, but there were other things going on in that dungeon as well that had nothing to do with that. Um,
And that's honestly, that is my preferred method of play.
yeah.
That is, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding at a lot of dungeon masters out there, and a lot of the books that if you buy an adventure, it's like a movie script,
Right.
right? Like it's a start to finish. Maybe there's a three-act structure or eight steps of a hero's journey or however but there's a beginning, middle, and an end, and it feels like a movie. But structurally, like designing a show is a much better fit for the packaging of like a real life D&D game where it is much more episodic. We might be gone for 6 weeks between things. People might come and go and I have to adjust the narrative to suit that.
Mhm.
So the monk left early last night. A new player might be joining us. Like I have all these ideas about how to include him, yesterday. I was like, okay, he could be right here. But then he was up in the air about coming until the last minute, and then he doesn't show up. So okay, so to introduce him into an ongoing series of episodic adventures, much easier. And
Yeah.
I think forcing that like in Dolmenwood and a lot of old school systems, you got experience from gold. That gold doesn't count until it's out of the dungeon and into safety. So there's an incentive to come back to town. I can also do that with rests. I've done that like to if you want 5e to feel more like this,
hmm
you can't long rest in a dangerous place. You're not
Right.
going to get the same quality of sleep. I don't care if you have a tiny hut. You're not getting everything back on a long rest unless you go back to town, sleep in the tavern, or take a zero. I used to do 0 days too. A full day is a long rest. 8 hours in the dungeon is the equivalent of a short rest. You can heal up, you get some abilities back, but like you can't just live in the dungeon. It's not for you. It's a different
Yeah.
environment. It's a different dimension. The mythic underworld will kill you if you spend enough time there. You have to leave and recoup and come back.
hmm
That suits my vibes better.
Yeah,
But
that
that's
makes a
not
lot of
5e.
sense.
That's not built into this game.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, back to our game. The magic items, since we mentioned them, I think we should probably let the viewers hear what was in the handy haversack. So, like, we got this treasure trove of exploration, like equipment, basically for like investigating shipwrecks. 'Cause we're ultimately looking for an artifact that has somehow been lost. We're trying to track it down. We're trying to track a ship down that's gone down. And so eventually we're going to have to like go underwater at some point. It seems to be leading us towards that. So we found this handy haversack, which in and of itself, the handy haversack is magical, right? Because there's
Straight
no
up.
way you could fit all this stuff into a backpack, you know?
Yeah,
We've
there's
got a
500 feet of like thick hempen like ship rope. There's 500 feet of that. So that in a, coming out of
which comes
a,
out of a container as a magic trick. You know, it's just like this
Mhm.
interdimensional, like you just keep pulling this
Mhm.
rope out of like it, a clown car, like it just keeps coming out.
I'm really proud of
So
myself. I described it as a fanny pack.
yeah, yeah,
A
that's right.
magical fanny pack.
I love it. A ring of free action. So that was funny because both Mike and I had an idea of what that might be, and it
What you
was
want it to
not
be.
what we thought. So a ring of free action is not, this is what it's not. Um, you get an extra bonus action or you get an extra action on your turn. It's what it is it's a it prevents you, like if you encounter difficult terrain, you can treat it as regular terrain, basically. Um, so that's useful, I'm sure, especially underwater.
Hmm
Um, three oils of slipperiness or oil of slipperinesses. We couldn't decide on what the oral version of that was. A folding boat, which is
pretty
pretty
dope.
cool. A boat in your pocket. An immovable rod, which this is the type thing. So this is what inspires me. Um, and I'm going to do this next week. I was supposed to teach after school to the middle school kids this week, but because of the delay, because they canceled school, not going to do that. Next week, though, I want to introduce them a few, like three relatively low level magic items and see how they could use them, right?
Mm.
So an immovable rod, there's so many things you could do with that with a little bit of imagination. Three potions of water breathing, which, if you're going to go ship, diving, that's great. But also a rod with continuous flame. So it could be like an underwater, like light source, and then a glass jar with 6 beads in it that are pressure capsules. So if you go down under like 100 feet in D&D and in real life, pressure becomes an issue if your water pressure becomes an issue. So that's one way to deal with it. These capsules will prevent you from taking damage or exhaustion or whatever mechanic the DM decides to use for, like, diving. So,
Yeah, you know what's interesting? I refreshed on the like underwater combat has been coming for some time, right? So
mhm.
that's in the PHB. I got to look at the new DMG for this because yeah, it is. I think it's 100 feet is the line where all of a sudden like I don't know what the number now you're talking about two, three, four atmospheres of pressure on top of you. You're starting to make constant, but I don't know the mechanism. I gotta look that up actually now that it's a new system.
Yeah, another one of the things so the immovable rod is one thing that I'm going to incorporate. I didn't think about that until we encountered it last night. The perfume of bewitching. That is one that I want to do too.
Hmm.
That's a nice one from Xanathar's, which is just a, perfume, but it gives you against humanoids. It gives a humanoids of a challenge rating of 1 or less. It
Okay.
gives you advantage. So if you're in a social situation with a bunch of NPCs, you can influence them. And the great thing about it is they don't know, even after the hour long effect expires, that they have been influenced by anything magical. So they're just like, gee, your hair smells terrific, or, wow, this, that guy's Old Spice,
Hmm
brings back
hmm
memories or something. And then all of a sudden,
hmm
like, you're
Yeah.
you're more charming than you were before.
He smells like my grandpa. I innately trust him.
Yeah, whatever it happens to be. So yeah, that could be a lot of fun. So yeah, that's the type of thing that I'm thinking about, is like, or even low level spells like cantrips. Like, just say, like, okay, create food. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. It's like, if you had create food, if you just had that, think about how different your life would be,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, half of what we do is is in the search for food, right? Just personally, biologically. But think about, like, you could potentially tame animals with it. You could, you know, form a charity. You could do, you could do Jesus and the loaves and the fish. You could do, you know what I mean? There's all kinds of, things that just that one particular cantrip could do for you, and just change your life. A lot, it doesn't have to be like meteor storm, there can be there can be a lot of fun play with seemingly simple spells. But I think it might be good exercise to see what the students do with that.
Yeah, and again, it goes to my preference of like you hand someone a tactical nuke. There's one way to use this thing. You give somebody, yeah, an immovable rod or like the alchemist jug or like things that like okay, there's not one. This doesn't do X points of damage. I have to use my imagination. I have to get creative. I have to fit this in some broader context to make it useful. And therefore, it can do a bunch of different things, potentially surprising things that even like the dungeon master, the game designer didn't think of. I don't know. Here, kid, is an infinite supply of mayonnaise. Go to
What are you
town.
gonna do with that?
Get back to me.
Yeah.
I've had players let it spoil, so it's like they built a biological weapon because they're going to weaponize whatever they can get.
No, no
But
doubt. Yeah.
it's I don't know. We're going to grease the path. There's a million things. Um,
Yep. Yep.
and that's more
Another thing,
interesting than like fi fire falls from the sky and kills everybody. Like cool, but I knew what you were going to do there.
um, Cosmic Omen, that came up. That's a trait for the starry elf druid. I guess is it a druid? I guess it may be a racial trait.
It's no, it's a Circle of the Stars
Circle of the Stars trait
subclass
for a
ability
class trait.
where
Okay. Yeah.
it's almost it's akin to like bardic inspiration. It's got like a little divination-y flavor to it because like you're consulting the stars, whatever. But you add a D6 to anybody's check.
Right before they roll it though.
Yeah, you have to declare it
And you have
before
to
it comes down.
declare that. And so unlike Bardic Inspiration, which I actually play with a player who has a set of coins so that people don't forget that they've been
Hmm,
given Bardic Inspiration, these
smart.
little wooden discs, and then it has like at each level like which die to roll, D4, D6, D8, D12, and then or D10. So yeah, the but Bardic Inspiration, the player who upon who it has been bestowed can decide to use that when they want to. So that's pretty cool though that Cosmic Omen is controlled by the druid who's bestowing it. That was neat. The the one-eyed seagull last night.
Ah,
Great, great NPC.
yeah. So there's the dungeon master lesson is being ready to provide the information a bunch of different ways. Essentially, you guys are exploring a mystery. You walk up to this place, everybody's dead. What happened? Like there's blood everywhere.
Bloody
What happened?
footprints. There's the smell of death. The polar bear, like the smell, or the brown bear smelled death.
And for the first, I don't even know, man, for the first 90 minutes of the game, no one could roll over an 11.
Yeah,
There was some very bad checks made. But there were various ways to learn what happened here, and maybe one of the most obscure ones was this wizard's familiar is still around, this like battered looking seagull, which we'll keep it PG, but his the place where he hung out was clear because the his guano had like cascaded out over like the windowsill down onto this desk.
yeah,
Uh,
that's his
it,
lair.
it was clear where his spot was. And I think the third or fourth time you encountered him, the druid was like, "Oh, I speak with animals. Like, I mean, what's up with the seagull?" And that was basically how you guys learned what a lot of what happened here and
Yeah,
what's about to happen when the
but
sun sets.
but I guess that's my point. What I brought it up is that, if you're gonna give your players, if you're the DM, you're gonna give your players exposition, right? If you're gonna actually, give them backstory and give them plot and give them like what happened here kind of thing. What a fun way to do it. right?
Hmm.
It's not just some guy. It's like this battered seabird who's got an attitude, you know,
Hmm.
and yeah, and then finds out like, look, it makes a deal with you. Basically says, look, if you avenge my former master, I will, you know, do you a favor. And because you agree to do that, I'll tell you what, you know, as much as I can about what you need to know for the next encounter. And sets a ticking clock, which is always fun too, right? So we have 4 hours to prepare for dusk before what did him in is coming back, you know. So that's always
Yes.
a fun mechanic as well.
Yes. Yes. And I will say an advanced DM thing, which again I can really get away with because I have experienced players at the table. If you guys
Mm.
were beginners, I might do something else. But especially last night, I worked very hard to only answer the questions you were asking. I didn't provide I didn't provide answers to questions you hadn't asked. And I didn't bury things in skill. I walk in the room, what's going on? Okay, that's a perception check. At one point, you were like, man, like, this is the kind of place where there would be murder holes. So it's like, yes, no check required. Like, you look for them, they are there. I'm not going to make you, like, roll poorly and not
Right. You
see
see
them.
the arrow slits in the walls just because you didn't look up, you know, right?
Right.
Yeah. It makes sense that you would look up, right?
So if you actively ask a question, like, what's going on with this desk here?
Well, actually, that was Patrick's idea. The paladin, he was like, I can make a whole bunch of holy water. Now, how are we going to deliver this? And then Mike said, well, my druid can come up with this, you know, storm, swirl it around in a, you know, water
Yeah, it wasn't tidal.
spouts.
It wasn't tidal wave. It was. I think it's a newer spell, or
Oh,
maybe it's a
it's
Tasha
a
spell. Or
wave of freedom of the waves.
hmm
And yeah, and but then it was like, well, why don't we just drop it on top of them? And so that's when we thought about the holes where you would drop like boiling hot oil or something else onto people in a small room where the air slits are. So yeah, that was the first entry. And that was, you know, the mouse that discovered that. So, you know, you don't just walk into the trap. So having those kinds of like using these, you know, like I said, these are abilities that are given to or low level spells that are attainable at relatively low levels, and using them creatively, you know, can amount to a lot less
Find familiar is
damage.
wild. Find familiar is a very like maybe shouldn't be a second level spell. Is a very strong.
It has, you know, I mean, it has limits. You have to stay within 100 feet of the creature. That's
Yeah.
still pretty far range. In order to like communicate with it telepathically, it can still exist outside of that range, but you don't see through its eyes. Um, but yeah, I agree. It could be that should be maybe, I don't know, third or fourth level
I'm
spell
just like I'm
maybe.
just second guessing now if it is a third level spell.
No, no, no. I
But
don't
it's a
have
first
any
level
third
spell.
level
It's a
spells.
first level ritual.
Yeah.
First level spell. Find familiar, wildly powerful.
Hmm.
If you can get it, take it.
Definitely. Definitely. So setting up for next week, we're going to investigate the rest of this fortress in anticipation of the undead coming back for us. And there was this really cool effect when the paladin consecrated the ground. We saw these kind of evaporating remnants of footprints of like a spiritual impression that had been left on the ground in the area that he was consecrating this dead body to make sure it wouldn't be risen again and used against us um, and buried properly out of respect. But yeah, pretty cool the way you described that kind of these evaporating footprints. That was really neat.
And again, that was like one of the prime clues. Like what happened here? And you guys just you rolled crap in the first hour of play when you're like, okay, this door was busted in and then like bolted shut again, and like there's an army of footprints coming up, but like everybody rolled bad perceptions and survivals and whatever. So like, okay, I'm disappointed that I didn't give it to you, but I fought my instinct to just hand it to you anyway, because
Right.
there's other ways to get this information. And yeah, lo and behold, a couple hours later, the Periton that you guys fought last week got this guy, literally ripped his heart out because that's what they do. You find him, you bury him. He does ceremony for a burial, which is a version of consecrate. So I had these undead, necrotic echo tracks of get cleaned up essentially by these and just left like salt around them because they're coming from underwater. So they're like soggy zombies. So the necrotic energy goes away, the salt stays because now it's
Ah,
purified.
that's nice.
And, you know, I was disappointed at 7 p.m. that I couldn't give you that information, but because I didn't at 9 p.m., I could give it to you in a much cooler, more impactful way
Yeah.
that like just arose organically, just emerged during play. Because like I didn't know he was going to bury that body, first of all, that he had that spell. So yeah, it was one of the cooler
Well,
things that happened last night.
yeah, and that's your payoff, right? So that's
Yeah.
the payoff for the DM, and DMs need that too. Like, that's, you know, the DM is a player at the table, and they're allowed to have fun while we're allowed to have fun while we're being DMs. So, it's good. It's a good thing to remember. But all right, well, the hour is up, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap this one up. Great talking to you. Oh, by the way, do aliens have ghosts?
I don't know. So Dex Save Dan asked me that came up in my Dex Save Dan interview, and if I knew the answer to that question, I would understand a lot more about the universe. More confident about aliens than ghosts. But I don't know. They were pretty him and Tui were pretty confident that the answer is no. What do you think? Do you have a
No,
guess?
I don't even know what the question is. Are you saying like I don't even know what that means. What does that mean? Like if in on an alien planet, a biological race has a house and they're haunted by spirits of their ancestors. I don't know. What does that mean?
Maybe because like if there's aliens, then like it could be a whole different like set of rules, right? I don't know.
I love it.
I'm officially, as much as people might think less of me for being for taking this position, like I'm open to it. Maybe, definitely,
No, I
maybe.
mean,
The
yeah,
older I get, the less confident I am that I know what the hell's going on here.
I have no idea. I have no idea.
We're not
There's
the first generation of people to know to have it all figured out. Everyone who's come before us has been like objectively wrong in major ways about most of their understanding or some major aspects of their understanding of the cosmos. We're revisiting the Big Bang. We were all taught the Big Bang. Now we're like, maybe not. I don't know. Turns out the universe is twice as old as we thought, so maybe
It
that's not what's
wasn't
going
that
on.
long ago. It was like 50 years ago when like continental drift like became a thing.
Yeah,
Every
yeah,
kid
tectonic
that's
plates
looked at a
were.
map or a globe has been like, hey, South America and Africa look like they could like, be like, a jigsaw
Yeah,
puzzle.
and that was like
But
a kooky conspiracy theory
yeah, and they're
until
like, that's ridiculous. And
yeah,
now that's completely accepted,
it's 1,000% what happened. Yeah,
and there's a
everybody knows
bunch of
Pangea was a thing.
yeah, and there's a bunch of like, evidence to support it. Yeah, so who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows?
Embrace the
Yeah.
woo. Be open to the woo, right? Absolute skepticism is as closed-minded as just being completely willing to believe anything, right?
Maybe
Like,
it just feels good. Maybe people who can do that, who can just say, no, this is the way it is, you know, that maybe that just makes them feel good. I remember having a conversation about the Battle of Marathon, I think it was, and or Thermopylae, and this guy I was talking to was like, I'm like, well, I mean, like even if Thucydides was, there, that's not right. That would have been a different battle. But even if like the firsthand source is there talking about it, they're in one small sector of the battlefield with a uh, you know a helmet like this, and their vision is like this.
and they're
Like
fairly preoccupied about
they're
not
not
dying.
they don't have a drone. They're not seeing the formations. They're not seeing like it in real time. Like they have an impression of what happened,
Yeah.
and then they're recounting that. I mean, if you go to a rock concert, how do you know what happens like in section, A1 when you're like in the nosebleeds? Like, actually you might have a better chance, but if you're in A1 and you're like experiencing the concert, you don't know what's going on behind you up
Hmm.
above, right?
Hmm.
So, oh, did you see that fight that happened up in the no, I was watching like, the stage. But so but he slammed his fist onto the bar and said, that is history. And I was like, wow. So for him, absolute fact is absolute fact. And that's a simpler way to live. I don't know. That's not the way I don't see the world that way.
Without trying not to sound too like smug or self-congratulatory about it, like one measure of intelligence is the ability to contain contradictory ideas and like entertain them. There is a very powerful like mental discomfort in it's like lifting weights before your brain of like considering something that you don't know is true or not
Mm,
create some sort of stress, right? And there's actually like this very interesting like horseshoe theory of like people in opposing camps, whatever topic we're talking about here. You get true believers on both sides, and one camp would absolutely balk at the idea that they're true believers, but the skeptics or the scientific minded or the historians are very much locked into one idea and have a lot of their own ego wrapped up in that being right and that it's part of their identity and their tribe. And that's in some ways it's dangerous. Many times it's harmless, but I know I'm wrong about something. I don't know what it is, and it might be alien ghosts. I have no idea. So I'll entertain it.
and that's a good place for us to
And
stop.
that's a wrap.
So let's let the audience think about that. Put your opinion in the comments below. I'd love to know what you think.
I would love that. Ladies and gentlemen, in the comments, please tell me
Please
what you
answer
think
this
about
question for us.
what are the odds that aliens have ghosts?
And we are doing the Ghost of Saltmarsh, so this is actually
There it is. There's the
there's a good
tie-in.
tie in there. All right, we'll see you all in the next one. Take care. Have a great one.